Hey, it's Ellie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad you're here. So if you're new, this is the podcast where I go through the Book of Mormon one chapter at a time and read it, give some commentary, give some insight, maybe give a little bit more context than what you might have had before. And all in all, I'm just going to be giving my thoughts on each chapter and hopefully making the Book of Mormon a little bit more accessible to the everyman. And so I'm here to make the Book of Mormon interesting and exciting and to hopefully bring it alive because I have a lot of passion and excitement about this book and I really do want to share that with you. So I hope that you enjoy. And I would also encourage that you go back to 1 Nephi 1 to get a little bit more context for this chapter. But I will do a little recap of the last chapter that we read at the beginning of every episode, so you don't have to worry. So if you remember last episode, we started 1 Nephi, which is the very first book in the Book of Mormon. Obviously, the primary author is Nephi, who's writing down records about his life and about his ministry and about things that happened during his life. It's very cool. The first chapter kind of sets the stage. Nephi starts out with his family. His father is named Lehi, who was a prophet at the time in Jerusalem, and his mother is Sariah, and his brothers are Laman, Lemuel, and Sam. They're living in Jerusalem, and his father Lehi, the prophet, has a very strong vision from God, saying that the people of Jerusalem are wicked, that if they don't repent, that Jerusalem will be destroyed. And that's the vision that he gets. And I remember just gushing about how cool that vision was, because I think, again, that we kind of undervalue visions sometimes, and they're just so cool. And then, so once he got that vision, he went and he, spoke to the people of Jerusalem, but they did not listen. And then we're gonna pick up from there. So yeah, with no more waffle, I think we start 1 Nephi chapter 2. For behold, it came to pass that the Lord spake unto my father, yea, even in a dream, and said unto him, Blessed art thou, Nephi, because of the things which thou hast done, and because thou hast been faithful, and declared unto this people the things which I commanded thee. Behold, they seek to take away thy life. And it came to pass that the Lord commanded my father, even in a dream, that he should take his family and depart into the wilderness. So here the Lord is going, good job. You fulfilled my commandment. You told the people what they needed to be told. Even though they didn't listen, you still get the blessings for following the commandment, which I think is something that we forget sometimes. For example, if you're a missionary, or if you know a missionary, and they don't get any baptisms on their mission, that doesn't make them less blessed for being on a mission, because they're still on a mission. They're following the commandments, they're following the call of God, they're serving. But even if they're not successful, they don't get the baptisms that maybe they were expecting to get, they still get the blessings because they're still out there doing the work. And so I think that's one example of this principle kind of in action today. Even if people don't listen, we still get the blessings for following the commandments. And it came to pass that he was obedient unto the word of the Lord, wherefore he did as the Lord commanded him. And it came to pass that he departed into the wilderness, and he left his house and the land of his inheritance, and his gold and his silver and his precious things, and took nothing with him, save it were his family and provisions and tents, and departed into the wilderness. And he came down by the borders near the shore of the Red Sea, and he travelled in the wilderness in the borders which are near the Red Sea, and he did travel in the wilderness with his family, which consisted of my mother Sariah, and my elder brothers, who were Laman, Lemuel, and Sam. So I think it's really powerful that Lehi gets this dream from God that says, okay, go into the wilderness, leave Jerusalem, and go. And Lehi's like, all right, we're going. He doesn't ask God, wait, what can I bring? What are we doing here? Why are we leaving? He doesn't do any of that. He just says, okay, we're going. You know? And I think that's really powerful. It's really hard sometimes to blindly trust God in that way, but Lehi is a great example of just trusting what God tells him and just following through. So yeah, that's honestly really inspiring how he was like, all right, we're leaving all of our riches, all of our gold, the land of our inheritance, probably had a nice house. They're leaving all of that, picking up their tents, they're going, you know? That takes a lot of faith, you know? I strive to have that level of faith. I don't think I could do that, but I would want to have that level of faith that Lehi has. And it came to pass that when he had traveled 3 days in the wilderness, he pitched his tent in a valley by the side of a river of water. And it came to pass that he built an altar of stones, and made an offering unto the Lord, and gave thanks to the Lord our God. And it came to pass that he called the name of the river Laman, and it emptied into the Red Sea, and the valley was in the borders near the mouth thereof. And when my father saw that the rivers of the water emptied into the fountain of the Red Sea, he spake unto Laman, saying, O that thou mightest be like unto this river, continually running into the fountain of all righteousness. And he also spake unto Lemuel, O that thou mightest be like unto this valley, firm and steadfast, and immovable in keeping the commandments of the Lord. Now he spake this because of the stiff-neckedness of Laman and Lemuel. For behold, they did murmur in many things against their father, because he was a visionary man, and he had led them out of the land of Jerusalem, to leave the land of their inheritance, and their gold, and their silver, and their precious things, to perish in the wilderness. And this they said he had done, because of the foolish imaginations of his heart. And thus Laman and Lemuel, being the eldest, did murmur against their father, and they did murmur because they knew not the dealings of that God who had created them. So an interesting, call it a theory, I guess, about the Book of Mormon is that Laman and Lemuel weren't specifically wicked in the traditional Judaism sense of the time. Because from what I've learned about ancient Judaism in this time period, it basically consisted of following a bunch of laws and giving sacrifices at the temple, and that was it. And so possibly in many Jews' minds at the time, the way that God spoke to man was through the temple, and that was it. That's the only way that God spoke to them. Even though there were examples in the Old Testament of God speaking to people through burning bushes, etc., they didn't really think that that happened anymore. At least that's what I think. And so I feel like Laman and Lemuel were completely content being so-called traditional Jews. I feel like they would be fully willing to give their sacrifices at the temple, follow Passover, do all these things, follow all of the laws, but they didn't believe that God could speak to people in visions or in dreams like God did to their father. That's, I think, one of the reasons that they're so against what their father is doing, because they don't believe that it's God, because they don't believe that God can speak to people in that way. They have a very narrow view of how God speaks to his people. And obviously this is just a theory. This is, the gospel according to Eli. But I think that kind of paints their behavior in a very interesting way, And it also teaches us, if you have a narrow window in how you think God speaks to his people, you won't find God in very many places. But if you widen your view and see God in everything, see God in nature, see God in the mountains, see God in the scriptures, see God everywhere, then you will find him everywhere. And I think that that's a valuable thing that we can remember, is that if you put God into a box, then you won't find him outside of that box. Anyways, so again, that's just a theory about maybe, Laman and Lemuel were just traditional Jews at the time and they weren't really flexible on their image of what God was. And I think that's why they kind of pushed back against their dad. They called him a visionary man. They called it the foolish imaginations of his heart. So yeah, maybe you can keep that theory in mind when you're reading these things, because it might paint their actions in a little bit more of a relatable way. Neither did they believe that Jerusalem, that great city, could be destroyed according to the words of the prophets. And they were like unto the Jews who were at Jerusalem, who sought to take away the life of my father. And it came to pass that my father did speak unto them in the valley of Lemuel with power, being filled with the Spirit, until their frames did shake before him. And he did confound them, that they durst not utter against him, wherefore they did as he commanded them. And my father dwelt in a tent. That verse, actually, that whole sentence, my father dwelt in a tent, is one verse. That is just a whole verse. And that is kind of one of the funny things about the Book of Mormon, is that there's my father dwelt in a tent, and that's a whole verse, It's kind of like the Jesus wept verse in the New Testament. The whole verse is Jesus wept. And obviously there's a lot of deep meaning to having that verse there. And there's also deep meaning to having this verse here. But I just think it's a little goofy, You can laugh at the Book of Mormon just a little bit sometimes. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, being exceedingly young, nevertheless being large in stature, and also having great desires to know of the mysteries of God, wherefore I did cry unto the Lord, and behold, he did visit me, and did soften my heart that I did believe all the words which had been spoken by my father. Wherefore I did not rebel against him like unto my brothers. And I spake unto Sam, making known unto him the things which the Lord had manifested unto me by his Holy Spirit. And it came to pass that he believed my words. But behold, Laman and Lemuel would not hearken unto my words, and being grieved because of the hardness of their hearts, I cried unto the Lord for them. See, this little section here is very instructive and very powerful, I think, because while Laman and Lemuel were just like, oh, Lehi's a visionary man, it's just the foolish imaginations of his heart, whatever, they kind of wrote him off like that. Nephi was like, all right, God, tell me if it's true. He went to God and was like, is my father speaking the truth? Make these things known unto me. He's not blindly following his father. He's asking God if his father's words are true. And then he gets a witness that they're true. And then he's like, all right, yes, I'm on board, And then he tells Sam, and Sam is like, yes, absolutely, that sounds amazing. And then when Laman and Lemuel don't believe and Nephi is trying to get through to them, he prays for them to God. He's not like, yeah, screw Laman and Lemuel, whatever. They're going to, crash and burn later. Karma's going to catch up to him. No, he's like, God, please help my brothers understand, And I think that's cool. And it came to pass that the Lord spake unto me, saying, Blessed art thou, Nephi, because of thy faith, for thou hast sought me diligently with lowliness of heart. And inasmuch as ye shall keep my commandments, ye shall prosper, and shall be led to a land of promise, yea, even a land which I have prepared for you, yea, a land which is choice above all other lands. And inasmuch as thy brethren shall rebel against thee, they shall be cut off from the presence of the Lord. And inasmuch as thou shalt keep my commandments, thou shalt be made a ruler and a teacher over thy brethren. Which, by the way, is very abnormal for the time, because Nephi's the youngest. And usually it's the oldest that kind of have that inheritance and that responsibility over their younger siblings. But since his older siblings are not super faithful, he takes that role instead, which, as you will see, his older brothers get pretty salty about. For behold, in that day that they shall rebel against me, I will curse them, even with a sore curse, and they shall have no power over thy seed, except they shall rebel against me also. And if it so be that they rebel against me, they shall be a scourge unto thy seed, to stir them up to the ways of remembrance. So that is 1 Nephi chapter 2. I definitely had a lot of things to say, and this is just another one of those chapters that is so inspiring, because you see Lehi and Nephi just having so much faith and so much trust in God. Lehi gets a dream from God that just tells him to leave, and then he's like, all right, we're going, And he may have questioned to some degree, but not to a significant enough degree that it made it into the record. And Nephi, when he hears these crazy words from his father that I think would genuinely be hard to believe. If your dad came to you one day and was like, hey, we're leaving, we're going to Kansas, what would you react, I feel like we're a lot more like Laman and Lemuel sometimes than we want to be, because we're like, what? No, we're not just leaving to Kansas. It's weird. That's crazy. But Lehi essentially did that. He was like, all right, guys, we're going to the wilderness. We're just leaving. And he didn't even have a destination in mind. He just knew that God had a promised land set aside for them, and then he just left. And he brought his tents and his family. That's so much trust in God. And I'm trying to cultivate that trust in God in my life. And, I'm not to Lehi's level quite yet, but I like to think that I'm making some progress. And then Nephi, when he hears Lehi's words, he immediately goes and prays and asks for a witness of his own. And sometimes I feel like when there are skeptics of maybe religion in general, not specifically the LDS Church, but also just religion in general, people are always skeptical of oh, you have a prophet or you have a book and you just listen to them blindly. That's not really the case. We hear the prophet's words and we believe them because we gain a witness of God, of their truthfulness. And I think that's a way different thing than just trusting someone blindly. I think that's a very important distinction. I think it's really cool that we can literally just pray to God and be like, is this true? And we can get a yes or no. Cultivating that skill for personal revelation can be difficult, and I'm still working on that myself, but it is very important. So yeah, I had a lot to say this episode, but I hope you enjoyed. And just a reminder, if you want to read along on your own, whether before listening to the episode or during, you can read along with me. You can go to lds.org to find the scriptures online for free. There's also a Book of Mormon app, just the Book of Mormon, or there's a Gospel Library app that has all scripture and all LDS resources on it for learning. So all those are options to you. All of them are free. So yeah, I highly encourage you to read along with me. It'll help you, I think, get a little bit deeper into the scriptures and kind of understand a little bit more. But obviously, this is a podcast, and so if you're listening to it while you're doing dishes or something, then that is also a wonderful use of your time. So yeah, I'm so grateful that you're here and that you're listening to this podcast, and I hope that you stick on this journey with me. And yeah, have a wonderful day. Talk to you later. Bye.